this edition of Hot Takes Live. Hope you had a good break. We are joined now by Nishchal Dua. He is VP Marketing at Infido. Nishchal, thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited for your talk. Take it away.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Gary. And hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the event so far. I've been to and I've presented and hosted a bunch of different events over the last couple of years. I think this entire format of Hot Takes Live is phenomenal. It just compresses a lot of information down to 15 minutes, and that's amazing. So I think a lot of you must be enjoying the event so far. Won't take too much time over the next 10, 12 minutes. I'll try to cover one contrarian opinion here, and let's go right into it. But before that, just a very quick overview. Gary was grateful enough to mention that I'm heading marketing at Infido right now. I've been in the B2B SaaS industry. That's my area of expertise. I've been here for about 10 years now. The last 6 years I've spent leading growth teams, marketing teams, product marketing and brand teams across multiple B2B SaaS companies. My specialization is especially the $0 to $10 million journey. So that's really where I've spent most of my time. And if you realize what the biggest challenge for most of these companies is, and we can move to the next slide here, what you will see is that essentially all your growth stage companies will have the same problem being repeated over and over again, right? You're facing a lack of great leads coming in. Your leads are not converting. Your revenue is not growing. Your customers are not sticking. No one really cares about you anymore. All of those problems come back to this one thing that everyone talks about, and that's brand, right? That one word, enough said about it, right? But that one word of that brand, it creates a lot of different emotions and feelings and memories for all of us, because we've all been in a space where we've heard things like, we need a better brand, we need a better brand recall. And no one across the table really knows what brand means in the first place, right? And no one can agree on what brand definition is, what brand measurement looks like, how do we really go about growing our brand. We all fumble around the table and we all talk about different things to execute, and we still want to go ahead and build a brand. So stuff like, hey, our competitors are winning deals over us because they have a better brand. All these conversations tie back to the same question of, what exactly is a brand in the first place? Is it my colors? Is it a bunch of other things? Should I just hire a brand manager, let them do this? Should my CMO or VP of marketing be the one to solve my brand problems? Is it product marketing? Is it growth marketing? Where does brand really sit in the entire marketing team? And those are all real challenges that we've all seen, we've heard, we've faced over time, right? One thing that I can very clearly align all of us on is, brand is not your colors. It's not your logo. It's not a website refresh, right? A lot of times when we think brand, we're like, hey, let's just redo the entire website. It becomes a 6 month long project. We get an agency, we do a visual design guideline, we write down an entire playbook around it. We rebuild the entire website only to realize 6 months down the line, the market landscape has changed completely. We need a different kind of a problem solution at this point. It's definitely not your merchandise. Sure, merch is great. Your swag is great. You've got amazing, good looking hoodies and caps and tumblers, but that is not what your brand is. It's not billboards. It's not celebrity endorsements. It's not buying a massive, piece of advertisement in a major national daily. Those are not your brand efforts. I think those could be differently channels or tools at your disposal. But if you're thinking that that's how you're really building a brand, at least from an early and mid-stage growth startup companies, you're definitely mistaken. So in a B2B SaaS world, that would not fly as brand at all. For me, brand, in the simplest terms, is the story that you tell over and over and over again. It's a story that you tell so many times in all the different places that you get bored by telling the same story. It becomes deafening to a level, and it becomes super annoying, and you become tagged as the person or the company that only talks about this particular message, this particular story. And that's the reason why brands are built over time, because you stick to that messaging that you have for as long as you can. And brand is definitely not a team sport. If you're thinking, let me try to get consensus across the board, let me try to get all my key stakeholders together, we'll all discuss and brainstorm and we'll come up with brand ideas, that's not going to fly. You'll always get the average result out of it. A group of people can never give you exceptionally great results. Exceptionally great results come when you're bold, when you experiment, when you try to go beyond the norm, because in today's world, if you're not standing out from the competition, no one's going to remember you. And for you to be memorable is what marketing is all about, right? A great brand is a company that people remember. So if your marketing is not memorable, if you're not creating MTM, moments that matter, then no one's going to remember you. And that's what brand is all about. And lastly, I think, and this is one of my additional views here, I think brand is a story that you cannot tell in isolation. It's not something that only your leaders or your marketing team is talking about all the time. You have to work with creators in today's world. We're seeing the emergence of massively scalable creator networks across social, across communities. And if you're not working to empower creators, if you're not working to build creators who can tell your story better than you can ever, then your brand will never hold true on its own, right? Another challenge here is that the authenticity of a brand is directly proportional to the quality of people who are talking about that story. So if you're the only one who's repeating, and if you don't have enough listeners and if enough people to re-advocate what you're talking about, then your brand falls flat, and then your brand is just something that you're talking about constantly, and no one really cares about that, right? So those are my four very high level bullet points on what brand could be and could not be, right? Goes back to the one simple line: is the sum of all interactions, all touch points your customers are ever going to have with you. And if there's a consistent storyline, and the deeper you go into that storyline, the better your brand recall really becomes here. And that brings me very quickly to something that I like to share at every event that I go with. I like to share a couple of ideas that you can go back and implement next Monday. So it's not a far-fetched playbook. It's not theoretical, theoretical items that you can just think about but not really work on. So in practice, what can you really do? Number one, host memorable events. Now, in my very strong opinion, I think events are the final frontier of marketing that are still completely untouched by AI. In today's world, I can't trust content. I can't trust video. To a huge extent, most forms of content marketing are extended to the worst possible extent. And AI and Chat GPT is really taking over in a big way from marketers today. Events are the final frontier where it's still super creative for you to execute on. And events create the best memorable experiences. And if you have the right memorable experiences, you can ensure that your attendees, your community members, your audience remembers the experience that you deliver to them, and by default remembers the brand that you're trying to build with them. So I think the number one takeaway for everyone who's trying to build a phenomenal, memorable brand here is to go back and think about the next event that they can host. And in today's world, events are not big budget, long duration, long turnaround time kind of affairs. They're super simple to execute, and it's just about the right kind of creativity that goes into it. Second, look within your own organization, look within your customer base, look within your community, and think about the 3 LinkedIn creators that you can create from within. You want people to be empowered with the right kind of story and the right kind of message, and for them to go out and take it in their own way. The more people resonate with your story, the more people connect with your story, the better your brand connects over time. It can't just be your official LinkedIn profile. It has to be a combination of your community, your customers, your employees, all of them together. And third, which is a great learning that I've had from HubSpot over the years, is HubSpot used to have this concept of own the internet for a day. Every year they would think about one interesting campaign that would go all out. It'll blow the world out. It'll create waves after waves. And I don't want to use the word viral over here, but it would essentially go viral. Own the internet for a day is just one way to think about how do I break this paradigm of running after processes and campaigns and programs and things just that give 10% improvement month over month or quarter on quarter. And how can I really move out of the box and make one execution layer that just owns the internet for a day? So even if you do this once a year, it creates enough of a ripple for you to get massive awareness. And what happens when you do all these things? How do you really go out and measure what brand impact looks like? Because you're going to get that question from your CFO, from your CEO, maybe even your CMO. How do I really measure my brand impact and all the investments I make towards my brand? So number one is that your brand search traffic starts growing up, right? The number of people who search for your company's name on Google starts going up. Track that number very carefully, because that's the most direct indicator of whether your brand recall is improving or not. You'll start seeing your blended CACs drop. And that's a phenomenal way to think about brand approach. In my opinion and my practice, almost every time 20% of our marketing program spend is allocated towards brand campaigns. And what we've seen is that running brand campaigns for upwards of 3 to 6 months results in overall CAC dropping down for all the other growth campaigns as well. So that's a great correlation you can build, that the more investments you make towards your brand campaigns, the better your CAC and CAC payback period looks like. Third, and the most important indicator that your brand is significantly strong now, is that your funnel conversions become smoother. So your conversion from MQL to SQL to SAO to opportunity to deal and to closed one, all of that becomes a lot smoother. Your conversion rates start going up. And you might be thinking, hey, maybe it's because of 10 other things that we executed across sales enablement, product marketing, content marketing. But end of the day, it's because your brand recall is so strong that all your prospects want to move further down the funnel. So if these three things are happening over time, and brand search traffic and blended CAC reduction and funnel conversion becoming smoother, then you have a very clear indicator that your brand efforts are giving you the right kind of results. So measure it in this way so that you can showcase the investments in brand back to key business metrics and not really talk about, hey, we revamped our merchandise, we did a rework on our website, and hopefully it takes and running brand surveys where hopefully you're checking in with people on how much their brand recall looks like. So these are my three takeaways in terms of stuff that you can experiment with the next week itself, and three ways for you to measure what brand impact looks like. And I think we're right out of time, so we can move to Q&A right after this. Just a very quick takeaway here in one key phrase, if you were to take it back from this session. Brand is the personality of your founders and the DNA of your company in action. So don't look outwards to create your brand story and your brand messaging. Always look inwards. Think about what's unique to us, what's the rationale for us to start this company in the very first place. What do we believe in that is significantly interesting and different from what our competitors would believe in, right? And I always go back to a couple of interesting examples. One from Mad Men. If you've seen it, you'll see how Don Draper launched a campaign for a tobacco company where the tagline was "It's toasted," which is true for everyone else, but that toasted is a perspective that's different from everyone else. Similarly, Dove did a campaign a few years back where Dove launched a soap. It was a premium soap with the tagline, "It's not a soap." So by calling it as not a soap, they're essentially positioning it as a premium soap in your head, right? So brand essentially is the personality of your founders and the DNA of your company. And again, like I said, this hyper focuses on early to mid stage B2B SaaS companies. That's about it from my side. Questions? Would love to hear any feedback, any questions.
Hi,
Hey,
Nishchal.
Gary.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Super enlightening. I guess my quick question: we've had a bunch of other speakers talk about content. We've gotten pretty technical in terms of like SEO and some things like that. How does this brand promise, this brand story, tie into content creation and how you tell that story?
Brand, in my opinion, is the only defensible moat in today's world. Everything else is a process driven playbook that can be very easily replicated, can be very easily scaled up and scaled down. It doesn't really create a differentiating aspect for you, it doesn't create recall for you. You could have the best content in the world, and that drives amazing SEO growth and traffic towards your website, but it could die out in India because it's dependent on algorithms, it's dependent on a third party search engine for it to continue driving traffic your way. Brand is the last defensible mode that you can build. It's also the most difficult thing to work on because it's opaque, it's a black box. You have to continue investing in it. And unless you see the right kind of traction, which I mentioned earlier, you would never know whether it's working or not, right? So I feel over time, marketing has become more of a methodical and scientific approach and less of an artistic or creative approach. And that's where we try to default towards marketing sources, channels, or strategies, which we can invest very defined in a very defined way in, right? So we have to always ask this question to ourselves: if I put $1 in, how many dollars am I getting back, and at what point? And if that's the question you're trying to address, you'll always be stuck in the same loop of doing what everyone else is doing. So if you have to step out of the box, create a niche for yourself, stand out, and build for the long term, nothing beats brand as a strategy there.
Cool. I think we have time for one more quick question. I'm a big fan of brand. I definitely skew on the science side, but I think good marketing is the yin and yang of science and art. But when you're dealing with other leaders in the business, typically brand is where you get a lot of pushback, right? Hard to measure ROI. Even one of the tactics you mentioned, events, which are definitely a good way to extend your brand, those are very hard to measure. They typically have a very long tail. So how do you make the argument to these like very numbers driven, ROI driven people that the investment here is going to make a difference?
Yeah, I think number one, it starts with conviction. Are you convinced that this is what you can do and you want to implement on? Because you're really sticking your neck out for this one, right? Everything else is an experiment that can be quickly executed, tested, and if it fails, it fails. But brand is not just an experiment, it's a long-term investment. It's the biggest investment you could be making. So the number one question is, are you convinced you really want to do this? And if you really want to do this, then I mentioned earlier as well, to create a business case that connects back to three performance layers. Number one, growth in search traffic, which is directly measurable in terms of dollar value. So how much are you spending on performance marketing today? If I could replace it with equal number of searches or click traffic from brand search, then I save a bunch of money for the company. That's number one business goal criteria. Number two, what if I bring down CAC by 30%, 15%, 25% over a 6 and 12-month period? That's money saved by the company. And number three, what if our conversion rates go up? Then by default, the company makes more money without making more investments. If those three criteria are relevant for my business organization, for my CRO, for my CFO, for my CMO, then that's a business case I would use to create investment opportunities in the brand.
Amazing. Thank you, Nishchal. If folks want to continue the conversation, if they want to, jam out on brand and how to build powerful brands, how do they get in touch?
Oh, I'm always there on LinkedIn, so they can always reach out to me, drop me a message. I'd be more than happy to talk about this regularly. Yeah, I do this a lot.
Awesome. Perfect. Everyone, hope you enjoyed the chat. We're going to take another quick break. We will be back with Eric Shu from Single Grain, talking about how to build a media company that drives ARR. Super interesting topic. Thanks for your patience. We'll see you in just a few.